So this entire week we spent going over the simple modes of inheritance, how the traits are passed from parent to offspring based on Mendel's observations. This week we're going into the complex modes of inheritance, so the things that Mendel had absolutely no clue about. So a little quick review about Mendel's principles. So 1, we know that inheritance of traits is determined by genes. So how you get the traits is carried on genes on your chromosomes. So we know genes are passed from parents to offspring. We know that right now that an allele can either be dominant or recessive. And we know that in sexually reproducing organisms, we have homologous pairs of chromosomes. Each pair of chromosomes, one comes from mom, one comes from dad. So way after the time of Mendel, it was discovered that some alleles are actually neither dominant nor recessive. So some alleles are kind of in between. And that up until this point, we always said that one gene controlled one trait. That your eye color was only caused by one gene, your dragons, whether it had wings or not, was controlled by one gene. But it's becoming more and more clear that many of your traits are actually controlled by multiple alleles, or sometimes even multiple genes, interacting together to produce the phenotype that you see. So the first complex interaction that we are going to discuss is incomplete dominance. So incomplete dominance is exactly what it sounds like. It's where it's not an allele is not fully dominant, so therefore it kind of mixes with the recessive allele, and you get a phenotype that is in between the two extreme alleles. So an example is in snapdragons. So big R is red, W is white. When an organism is heterozygous, one red allele, one white allele, it makes a pink color, and that is incomplete dominance. The other type is known as codominance. In codominance, both alleles are expressed. So you don't see a blending, you usually see a spotting. So an example is in corn. Both black corn and yellow corn are dominant colors. When you have a heterozygote for this trait, you see that you have both yellow corn and black corn being expressed. And you see in the bottom picture, you see how it's that splotched look in the flower with the red and the white. That is the characteristic sign of codominance, is looking for that spotted look. So we have a cross between two different chickens, and we can see the parent chicken is completely black, the other parent's completely white. When you do the crosses, all of the offspring are heterozygous for the trait. And the question is, does this show incomplete dominance or codominance? And you can see that when you see both the traits expressed, you know that it is codominance because you see the spotted color of both the black and the white. So again, we have two cows, one's brown, one's white. You mate them together, you get a cow that is white spotted and brown spotted. So that is an example of codominance. Another one, you have white flower, red flower, and in between you have pink. Anytime you see an in-between phenotype of the two extremes, not spotted, completely perfectly blended, that is incomplete dominance because it's too weak to completely mask the recessive trait. So when a trait is controlled by multiple genes, we call that polygenetic, because by now you definitely should know poly means many, and genetic means genes. So examples of those are eye color and height, and even skin color. There is actually multiple genes that combine together to give your phenotype, which is why everyone's eye color is slightly different. Same reason for skin color. You see that it's actually controlled by at least 4 genes. At least. So we should already know about homologous chromosomes. We know all your chromosomes occur in pairs, 22 pairs of autosomes and a pair of sex chromosomes. We know homologous means the same, so they're the same size. One thing I do want to highlight actually though is that if you were to look at the homologous pairs of chromosomes, the different alleles of a gene are actually located at exactly the same position on each chromosome. So if you look at the picture on the left, you can actually see that on both chromosomes there might be a red band representing an eye color gene. So both of them have the allele at the same exact location on the gene. So far we've only discussed traits that have two possible alleles. Either you have wings or you don't. Either you're red or you're white. Either you're blue or you're yellow. So this actually is not always the way things work. Sometimes you have things called multiple alleles. So when you have several alleles, we call that multiple alleles. So multiple alleles is just defined as when there's more than two possible alleles for a gene. So another example is rabbits' coats. So there's actually many different alleles that control the coats of a rabbit. So you can see the different combinations, how they go all the way from albino up to a dark gray. So the best example of multiple alleles in our body is blood type. So you should hopefully know that there are 4 different main blood types. You have type A, type B, type O, and type AB. Those 4 different blood types are made by combining 3 different possible alleles. You have type A allele, which is represented by capital I, big A. You have the B allele, which is capital I, big B as a subscript. And then you have the recessive O allele, which is a lowercase I. So in terms of blood type alleles, both the A allele and the B allele are dominant to the O allele. A and B are actually codominant, so both are expressed if present. So using those 3 alleles, you can make 4 different blood types. You do need to remember what genotype would lead to what blood type and understand that relationship. So to make a type A person, you either need 2 copies of the A allele or an A allele with an O allele. To make a type B person, you need 2 copies of the B allele or a copy of a B and an O. To make an AB person, you need to get an A from one parent, a B allele from another. And to make a type O person, you must get 2 recessive O alleles from your parents. Because remember, each allele, one comes from mom, one comes from dad. So a type A person and a type B person could most likely make a type AB child. So what does this type A, type B actually mean? So the A and the B stand for different antigens, which are little carbohydrate chains that are on the outside of your red blood cells that help your body identify host from non-host. So if you're type A, that means you have A antigens on the exterior of your red blood cells, and you make type B antibodies. So when you inject a type B blood into a type A person, the B antibodies will kill the type B blood and will reject it. So that's why you cannot just randomly put different people's blood in you. Type B people are the exact opposite. So type B people have B antigen on the outside of their cells, meaning they have anti-A antibodies. So that you can't take persons with A blood and put them in a type B person. If you have type AB, you have both antigens, which means you do not have any antibodies, which is great for you because that means you can take almost anybody's blood because you don't have anything that would fight it off. And if you're type O, you have no antigens, which means you have both antibodies. So we really need type O people because they can give their blood to anyone. However, unfortunately for them, they can only accept another type O blood. So that's why if you ever go to the blood banks and donate blood, they're always looking for type O blood because it is so rare and because it is so crucial because they can give it to almost anybody. Now there is another factor which I might mention in class next week called the Rh factor. If you ever heard of A positive versus A negative, that deals with the Rh factor, which is another trait, another protein on the outside of your red blood cells, which we might discuss next week. Alright, so a practice problem with blood typing. So we have a mom, she's type AB, we have a father who's type O. We draw the Punnett square, and now we want to figure out the probability their offspring will have type A blood. So we fill in the Punnett square like we've been doing for well over a week now, and hopefully you can fill it out and figure it out. So when we fill it out, we have an type A in here, we have an A in here, we have a B in here, a B in here, a type an I. Also, do not ask me why we use I's to represent blood typing. I have no clue. That's just what's traditionally used. So if we look at what will produce type A, well, these two on the right will be type B blood. So therefore, it's these two to the left. Therefore, it is 50%. So can they produce an offspring with type O blood? So to create type O, you must have two recessive little I alleles. We don't see that anyplace, so they cannot have. Another one, a mother is type IA, type O child, and little I, and a father is homozygous for B blood. Draw the Punnett square. So we have IA, little I, IB, IB. Fill it in. And we have IB, little I, IB, little I. What is the probability their offspring will have type B blood? Well, these two on the left are type AB, so they can't be it. Therefore, it's the two on the right are type B blood, so it is 50%. And can they produce an offspring with O blood? No, because they all have A's or B's in the boxes. So 0% again. See, it's really rare to have type O blood. So the last question of the lecture, hey, look at that. This video will be under 15 minutes only. So if a child has AB blood, which of the following could not be the parents? You'll see this type of question a lot where you're given a kid's blood type and say, should this father pay child support or not, and why? So if you have type AB blood, that means you got the A allele from one parent and the B allele from another parent. Only one of these answer choices has a parent that has neither an A allele nor a B allele. So you can clearly see that the only answer choice that could not create a type AB child would be answer choice A. Because you have this parent here with type O blood, they cannot have a type AB, even though the other parent's type AB. Because you need to get the A from one parent and the B from another. So this is the first part of chapter 7 in your textbook if you need more explanation. Make sure you have this done by Monday.